All right, guys, welcome back to the Over the College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are looking at the New Mexico Bowl between New Mexico State and Fresno State, 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time, December 16th, Saturday afternoon on ESPN. Aggies are 3.5-point favorites, live from University Stadium in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Looking at the Aggies, Jerry Kill this year was able to get this team, in the conference championship game, ripped off a long winning streak over 2 months, ended up losing to Liberty for the second time. In the CUSA title. They lost to him twice on the road. That's a team that's undefeated, Nick. That's no slouch one bit. This is still a really good team that played great offense, even in that bowl, that title game. Led by Diego Pavia, Conference Player of the Year on offense. 26 touchdowns passing, 2,900 yards, another 6 rushing with 851. 8 interceptions. This is a guy who progressed tremendously last year. He had a pretty solid season, getting this offense elevated with his dual threat abilities. But this year, the production really took main stage. And some of the guys have really helped him out. Jonathan Brady, 613 yards at wide receiver. Trent Hudson has 571 and 10 touchdowns. And Eli Stowers, former quarterback, has 32 receptions for 346. So it's a nice trio of pass catchers for them, led by, again, that balance of Pavia that has him as the leading rusher on this team. Star Thomas, 643 and 4 scores. Monty Watkins has 550-plus rushing at 10 yards per carry. This is an interesting rushing attack, Nick, because these running backs, they only get a couple of touches per game for whatever reason. Even Pavia's only at 11.5 attempts per contest, but they're incredibly efficient. 5.8 yards per attempt, north of 200 yards per contest. This is a balanced offense that has really taken shape over the past couple of years, and I'm impressed.
This is a very balanced offense that has a good way to hit you in a couple different ways here. They can really hit you on the ground and hit you through the air. 28.7 points per game for this offense, 5.79. Rush yards per attempt, 6.98. Passing yards per attempt. Solid numbers overall for this Aggies offense. Obviously, it starts with Pavia, the quarterback. Nearly 3,000 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 61% comp rate. Really solid numbers from this talented player. He's fantastic on the ground with 851, 5.4, and the 6 scores. They try to keep his legs safe at times. Cut him to, like you said, about 11 attempts per game on the ground. But when he does get the ball on the ground, they really can torch you, and it has some solid momentum there. Star Thomas is a fantastic player with his 643, 5.8, and 4 scores. Antome Watkins is solid as well, 10.1 yards per attempt on the ground for him. 2 scores, 563. Jamarni Jones, Malachi Young down there. So they have a really nice deep back room they can kind of spread out to. They have a solid wide receiving room as well to catch from Pavia. Overall, this is an offense that's very productive. They're efficient. They get the job done. 28 passing touchdowns to 9 interceptions is a solid ratio for this offense as well.
400-plus yards in 4 of the last 5 games. That includes a game against Auburn. They won by 21 on the road. This offensive line's a pretty solid unit, led by center Canyon Yarrow. You look at Fresno State, a team that certainly started off the year hot. They were in contention to get that New Year's 6 bid potentially. Started off with a win against Purdue on the road. 5-0 start to the year. Lost to Wyoming. Ended up winning 3 in a row. But they've lost the last 3, and it's due to this offense just all of a sudden lacking. Mikey Keems and having a great year at quarterback, 2,600 yards, 21 touchdowns to 9 picks. Last 3 games, though, 110 passing, 58. And again, I think he actually got hurt I would assume, and then 190. They've completely just fallen off a cliff. And that New Mexico defense is not good one bit. And they were only able to manufacture 17 points. Backup quarterback Logan Fife, he's in the transfer portal. So if there is going to be any health issues, that's certainly not going to be great for them. Held to under 350 yards the last 3 games, Nick. And then, if you want to consider 4 of the last 5, they've been held to under 350. They had a big explosion middle part, early, stretch of the season. It's kind of died out, but this is still a talented unit. Eric Brooks, 711 yards, 5 scores, a pass catcher. Jalen Moss has 51 receptions. Magdalena and Jalen Gill both have 44 receptions each. And then 5th leading pass catcher Trey Watson at tight end, 35 for 359. This is a versatile receiving core, and despite having some struggles down the stretch, they still have some impressive production. What's the expectation here, Nick, going against a good football team with, the offense really just hitting a low point, it seems, to close out the season?
It's an offense that was solid in the early part of the season, right? 29.9 points per game, so basically 30 points per game. They were effective as well, 5.54 yards per play. 3.67 yards per attempt on the ground is kind of a disappointing number. 26 passing touchdowns to 11 picks. The last couple weeks, it's really not been good for this team at all. 18 points 17 points, 18 points in their last 3 games. They've been struggling to score points at all. They struggled to score points in their loss at Wyoming as well. In their 4 losses, they haven't got more than 20 points in any of those games. It's certainly disappointing if you're a fan of this Fresno State Bulldogs team. It's disappointing. Mikey Keene is a solid quarterback who's just been kind of looking rough the last couple of weeks. 65% comp rate, 2,500 yards, 21 scores, and 9 interceptions for him. I like that ratio. It's not a bad ratio. Eric Brooks is a great target for him, right, with the 7-11, 12.9, and 5 receiving touchdowns for him. Moss, 5 touchdowns as well, 12.4 and 630. Gill, Watson, Delana are all really talented players. They have some deeper players. Malik Sherrod as well out of the backfield has some receiving. He's their leading rusher by 500 yards, who's putting up some solid production of 876, 5.8, and 9 scores for him. This offense seems to struggle to find that balance, and they really have not been able to succeed. The 100 yards per game on the ground is a really notable and a problem for this offense. They cannot run the ball at all, and it's certainly causing them issues.
Yeah, it's certainly a high-volume passing attack, but almost 30 attempts per game on the ground. If you take out the sack yardage, they're still only putting up about 4.4 yards per carry, which is a pretty sound number. Like you said, Malik Sherrod, 876, 9 scores this year. Elijah Gillum, solid 1-2 punch, but this isn't exactly an effective running game by any means. They've only topped 150 yards twice, and that was exactly 151 in 2 different games. So it's not expected to be a big factor here. It's a pretty sound offensive line. I think I got some good pass blockers. Moses Vivo at right guard, and then next to him at right tackle, and Braylon Nelson's probably their best part. I'm going to go ahead and give New Mexico State the edge on this side of the ball, Nick. I certainly like the high-volume passing attack, but with what I've saw the last couple of weeks, it just doesn't seem like something I can bank on compared to Pavia and his group, where, yeah, they lost to Liberty, but they really had that defense on skates for most part of that game, Nick. They beat Auburn, Jacksonville State, a great defense they put up 450-plus yards on, so I think the clear advantage is laying with the Aggies.
And the clear advantage is certainly with the Aggies. They're a very talented bunch here who are having success on the ground and through the air. 427 yards per game is a great number. They're scoring at a high rate as well. I like this offense a whole lot in this matchup.
You look at the defenses for New Mexico State. This is a unit I felt like could probably keep the game in a low-scoring type of atmosphere against Liberty. I picked the over in that game, but I felt like they would have a lot more success than giving up 50 points and 712 yards of offense. We're watching this one live in Vegas, Nick, and this was absurd. They gave up almost 400 rushing, 300-plus passing. I mean, they just completely ran into a brick wall after having some good efforts against JSU, completely dynamite against Auburn. This is a defense for the most part of the year was really good. Of course, that first matchup against Liberty, they also got 20 for 500-plus yards. Take out those 2 games against the Flames, Nick, and this has been a pretty sound defense this year, especially with what they have up front. Keyshawn Elliott at linebacker, 8.5 TFL. It's also, the leading tackler of 101 of those. Gabe Peterson at his outside linebacking spot's been very good. Sterling Webb at the defensive line position, Isaiah Reed, Gabriel Inguez. I mean, they've had some nice rotation on this side of the ball. Jerry's certainly getting these guys to perform much better this season. It certainly led to a nice resurgence here. Good news is, Nick, they're not facing, that spread option type of offense that Chadwell likes to run. They're not going to be facing Liberty in this game, and I think that's certainly going to be big for them because when they don't play the Flames, the defense plays pretty well, especially when it comes to slowing down the run. Where this year, they're only giving up about 145 yards per game. If you take out almost 400 of that, you completely forget about the last game. That number is significantly lower. Their expectations here, where again, they've only given up over 200 yards twice on the ground to the same opponent.
This is certainly a talented defense that's solid at stuffing the run. It definitely kind of screws up their average, right? Their average yards per attempt given up is 4.41. But like you said, if you take out the 2 losses to the Flames, that average goes down very handily. 21.8 points per game given up, about 6 yards per play of total offense. This team has been solid. They gave up 17 points against Jacksonville State, 10 points against Auburn, 29 against Western Kentucky, 7 against Middle Tennessee State, 7 against UTEP, 13 against Sam Houston. So they have been able to shut down offenses this season, and it certainly relies on some of their talented players in that front part of that defense. Keyshawn Elliott, the sophomore linebacker, is a great player. 101 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 5 pass breakups, leading the team in those categories. Very good numbers out of him. Sterling Webb is another guy I like. He's a very talented player who's having a decent season with 28 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. Bududa Politi, 32 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks for him. Gabe Peterson, 51 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks for Peterson coming off the edge. This is a very young unit, so his defense will continue to get better with time. I like what I've seen on this front unit, though. They're able to get in the backfield, stop the run, and they have a pretty physical unit. 145 allowed per game on the ground. It's a pretty solid number.
Secondary isn't a bad unit by any means. 240 yards per game allowed, only 6 interceptions. Most of those coming here in the back half of the season, so I think they're certainly playing better football. Again, Liberty kind of tore them up. For the most part, they've been able to hold their opponents in check, limiting big plays, holding to lower, completion percentages at times in the second half of the season. So I've been happy with that. You look at a guy like Miles Roser at safety. He's been a phenomenal player this year. I'm pretty sure he got all conference honors. He's been great. J.J. Derville, another safety. Those guys both have 60-plus tackles. They're not exactly ball hawks here, but I think limiting the big plays is something you're going to continue to look for. Reggie Ackles, one of their top playmaking corners. He's in the transfer portal, so it doesn't appear as he will play. So that's certainly something to monitor. Keontae Glinton, though, he also has 6 pass breakups. Andre Selden. Seems like they got some players here that are probably going to be able to step up in the final game of the season. Do you worry about this secondary, though, against the high-volume passing attack that has, shown effectiveness and efficiency at times this season?
There are some concerns with this secondary for me. I definitely worry that they might struggle against a very effective passing attack. I think these are some worries that can be solved if they shut down the run and get themselves focused in the back end. There are some talented pieces for this secondary unit. Miles Rouser, a transfer that stepped in, 63 total tackles, 1 pick, 3 pass breakups for him. Jeremiah Darville, 4 pass breakups, 62 total tackles for him. Solid numbers on that front. Andre Selden, 50 total tackles, 6 pass breakups, and a pick. Malik Miller, 50 total tackles, 2 pass breakups, and a pick for him as well. So there are some solid productions from this unit. They only have 6 interceptions on the season, which is a bit low and kind of disappointing, which is why you can consider that this Fresno State offense, which is a pass-heavy offense, might have some success here. I think this New Mexico State team is up and ready for the challenge. They've had a pretty good second half of the season, and they're looking to capitalize here against this Fresno State offense.
The Bulldogs defense, very similar numbers, 25 points per game allowed, 385 yards per contest. Thing here, though, their defense also has had a pretty sound year. They only gave up 200 plus only once before they entered November. Final 3 games, they gave it up 3 games in a row. They gave up 5 yards per attempt to Boise State before that, 313 to San Jose State. New Mexico at 345. All these teams, you look at 5 of the last 6 games, opponents have had 40 plus rushing attempts. So they're certainly finding some areas to exploit, it seems, in the middle of this defense from Fresno, where for the most part they handled it very well, but the attempts have went up in the second half of the year, and so have the yardage and the efficiencies and the touchdowns for these opponents. So it just hasn't been the passing attack that's kind of fallen off. It's kind of the run defense as well, it seems. Still have a great player in the middle, Lavelle Bailey, Mekhi Langley, some nice linebackers. These are impressive players. Devo Bridges up front. He certainly is an impactful player of his 49 tackles this year. Jacob Holmes, another defensive lineman with 6 TFL. This is a unit that I think is certainly good. Isaiah Johnson's return over the last couple of weeks has certainly been beneficial. Now he's back to full health. But I'm kind of concerned about the downtrends, not just on the offensive side, but this part of the football team as well, because New Mexico State, they're going to look to run the football a good bit, Nick, and with that dual threat quarterback, they can certainly expose you a good bit. And they were able to do that against Liberty, with their balance. And I think Fresno State right now seems like they're trending backwards.
I think they are certainly trending backwards. They do have some solid players in this front 7, but overall this run defense has not been fantastic as of late. This defense has given up 24.6 points per game. They've given up 15 rushing touchdowns, 4.35 yards per attempt on the ground, 5.49 yards per play total, 16 interceptions to 19 touchdowns given up in the passing game. Mekhi Langley, 80 total tackles, leading the team, 5 tackles for loss, 1 sack for him. Lavon Bailey, 74 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 3 picks, 5 pass breakups. He's been kind of a renaissance man for this team, doing it all. Jacob Holmes, 16 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Good numbers at him. Obviously, you want to see the production be a little bit higher. Isaiah Johnson, finally healthy, a solid piece with 20 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and a sack for him. You want to see more production out of these guys. You're kind of disappointed with some of the production. Devo Bridges as well is having a solid season. He's been productive for this defense with the 49 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. But this front defensive part of this unit, you want to see a little more production out of him. They've kind of waned off as the season's gone on, and it's definitely a problem for them.
The Bulldogs secondary is very good, though. They've been very standout last couple of games. Of course, the opponent has been running a lot on them, so the numbers could certainly be skewed a little bit. They've given up 300 plus only twice this season, but the efficiency has been very low for their opponents. Only 56% comp rate this year. They've only allowed over 60% on 2 occasions this year, so that's very impressive. This is a ball hawking secondary. 16 picks this year. Carlton Johnson leads the way with 4. Morris Norris has been great for them. Dean Clark, Cameron Bracha, he's been great as well. Some very talented DBs here. And then linebacker Lavelle Bailey has 3 interceptions of his own. So these guys certainly find their way to the football through the air, Nick. If they can, find a way to limit this ground attack, I think they'll have some good success defending, an impressive trio of pass catchers of the Aggies. I like this part of the defense for Fresno, and I think it's certainly something that's going to, fire them up for this contest.
I do like this part of the defense. Like I said, 16 interceptions and 19 passing touchdowns given up. Pretty solid ratio there. There are some solid pieces. Dean Clark, 77 total tackles, 2 picks, 4 pass breakups. Maurice Norris, 55 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 2 picks, 9 pass breakups. Great stat sheet lines from Norris. Carlton Johnson, 53 total tackles, 4 interceptions, 7 pass breakups for him. Alzion Hamilton, 29 total tackles, 7 interceptions for him, plus 2 picks. Phoenix Jackson, 29 total tackles and a pick for him. So they do have some ball hawking DBs here, which is certainly helpful. But I think New Mexico State's going to be able to run the ball, which will kind of counteract this issue of the pass defense here being so strong for New Mexico State. If they can continue to run the ball on the ground, they'll have no issues against this Fresno State passing defense.
Leads us to the final thoughts in the prediction. For New Mexico State, the run defense needs a bounce-back game. They just need to let Diabo Pavia work. He had great success against Liberty before leaving the game, and even the backup had done good work, so this offense is certainly clicking. For Fresno, it's the opposite. They're looking for a bounce back on the side of the ball. Mikey Keenan and a great group of receivers looking to see what they can do, and they need to create negative plays on the early downs. I just think this is a spot for New Mexico State. It's going to be played in their home state. This is going to be a pretty easy road trip for some of these fans. 38-24 final for me. I just think Fresno, they've been trending, downward in the wrong direction with its passing offense and their run defense. It's bowl season, right? They could come out and just have an elite showing on both sides, but I think the Aggies, they're going to be fired up for this game. It's an important contest for them, and, this is an impressive team. I was pretty happy with what they were able to accomplish last year. I picked them to beat Bowling Green as, I think like a touchdown underdog or something in that bowl game, the Quick Lane Bowl in Detroit. So obviously the postseason means something to them, Nick, and I think they're going to win this game pretty handily.
I like the Aggies to win this game as well. What a season for this team. They lost their season opener to UMass in week 0, and it seemed like, same old New Mexico State Aggies. They're going to be in trouble joining a conference for the first time playing Conference USA, but they absolutely turned that around, finished 10-4 in the regular season, played in their conference title game their first year in the conference. They're being independent for a while. I know they lost to Liberty, but they put up a hell of a fight in that game and ended up losing by 14. That was a close contest. They were leading through a lot of late portions in that game and just ran out of gas against a very talented, unbeaten Liberty team. This team has beaten an SEC team this season on the road at Auburn. A very impressive win. Fresno State trending in the wrong direction. 3 straight losses and really not looking particularly good in any of those losses, especially the loss at San Jose State and San Diego State. 2 bad losses on the bounce. I like, New Mexico State to win this game. I like the team with the hotter offense and the hotter team in general. Give me the Aggies in this one. It should be a fun kind of bowl game to kick off the start of Bowl Mania on that first Saturday.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.
So fucking annoying talking about these games. Who fucking cares?